Welcome to the discussion of Part 4, Chapter 6. So, in the beginning of this chapter, we see that there's this disturbance happening outside of the room where Porfiry is questioning Raskolnikov. And Porfiry seems pretty taken aback. He's not expecting this. He has a surprise for Raskolnikov. Raskolnikov doesn't know what it is, but it becomes pretty clear that this is not the surprise that Porfiry had planned. And there ends up being some shuffling, some pushing, and then in pops Nikolay. Nikolay is the painter, one of the two painters that was painting that day in the flat and that had eventually, when he went back up to the flat, found the earrings that Raskolnikov had dropped. And through some course of either questioning or maybe in his concern of Mitka, his fellow painter, not being accused, he comes in and very unexpectedly, he gets on his knees and he admits that he is the one who killed the pawnbroker and her sister. And Porfiry feels like he's this close to getting Raskolnikov. And he just can't even believe what he's hearing. And neither can Raskolnikov. I mean, clearly Raskolnikov knows it's not true, but Porfiry Petrovich also knows this is not true. He knows Nikolay is not the killer. And so he's just like, this is really throwing a wrench in things. And so he's very shocked and he starts to question him a little bit. And then he suddenly remembers that Raskolnikov is there. And he's like, oh, you know what? We'll meet again. He kind of like quickly ushers him out the door. And Raskolnikov's like, what about the surprise that you wanted to share with me? And Porfiry's like, yeah, well, maybe another time. We still have business to discuss. And Raskolnikov is kind of having a little bit of a sarcastic, like, enjoying the moment a little bit that Porfiry is so shaken up and that this is not at all what he had planned for him. And he's kind of like, I think we're done. I think we can just say goodbye. And Porfiry's like, well, no, I mean, there's still a few more loose ends, we should tidy up. And yeah, we'll meet again. And it ends very awkwardly where Porfiry's just trying to usher him out. And Raskolnikov walks out of his office, and the first thing he sees are the two porters that were there the day that he went and where he was kind of like a little bit delirious and wandered in back into the pawnbroker's flat. And that time where it's almost like he felt compelled to go there. And when he went up, the painters or they were workmen. They were kind of like cleaning up the flat, getting it ready for resale. They were putting up fresh wallpaper and all the furniture had been cleared out and it was empty. And Raskolnikov was asking questions like, where's the blood? Did you clean the blood? And they were like, why are you being so weird? I mean, he was being weird. And so then when he had left, they were like, yeah, this guy's asking about the apartment. He's in there asking about the blood. And the porters, it was late. The porters are just like, he's drunk. He's just, one of these guys who just wants to come to the scene of a crime and, gawk at it. And they didn't take it very seriously, but there was somebody there with the porters. There was more than just the porters. There was kind of a bit of a crowd on the street. And somebody was like, we should go to the police station, take him to the police station and tell him about this guy. And Raskolnikov had been like, yeah, I'll tell you all about me. And I think he gives him his address and he's like, we can go to the police station. And he's kind of egging him on, but they're all just like, kick rocks, buddy. And so he sees these guys here and he's like, oh, he recognizes the porters. And he's like, oh, maybe that, like, what are they doing here? Like, maybe that was the surprise. So he goes home and he's thinking about, like, he just kind of feels like he's not out of the woods. He kind of knows that although Nikolay has confessed, that it's not going to be too hard for them to prove that Nikolay wasn't the killer. And that eventually, once they kind of get rid of that situation, that they're still going to be on to Raskolnikov. But he feels definitely like it's bought him some time and that he has some breathing room. And he is enjoying the fact that he has this breathing room on the day where he's going to go and get to see Sonia again. And so he had told Sonia if I see you again, I'm going to tell you who killed Lizaveta. And so maybe that's what he means when he's like, kind of like it's time type of thing. And he gets up to go. He grabs his hat. He kind of gets his thoughts together. He grabs his hat. He's ready to walk out the door. And as he's touching the door is moving on its own. He steps back, and in walks that guy that had come up to him in the street and called him a murderer. That guy that he had like walked next to, and the guy that had just been like very cryptic and calling him a murderer. This guy, Raskolnikov wasn't even sure if he was real. Remember, he had asked, I think Svidrigailov, or he'd asked somebody, he's like, did you see him? Did you actually see him? I think he asked Razumihin, like, you saw him with your own eyes. And it was this guy that he was thinking about when he saw Svidrigailov, when Svidrigailov was talking about being able to see the ghost of his wife. And Razumihin was like, yeah, I did see him, because Raskolnikov had been questioning if maybe this guy was a ghost. Like, is he going crazy? Is he seeing a ghost? He's been very rattled by this guy, because this guy was just like so mysterious, and he kind of thought that he wasn't even really human. Like maybe he was like from the spiritual realm. So when this guy shows up and he's in his room, he's pretty freaked out, and he's like, and the guy immediately bends down and asks him for forgiveness. He's like, he's like, he's asking for forgiveness. And Raskolnikov's like, for what? And the guy just keeps rambling about that he was vexed. He was vexed. He couldn't sleep. And he was there that day when Raskolnikov had gone to the flat of the pawnbroker and asked about where's the blood. And he thought it was really unusual and super suspicious. And he was the one in the crowd who kept trying to get the porters to go to the police and tell them about this guy. And the porters didn't want to do it. And Raskolnikov's like, you were there? And he's like, were you the surprise? Did you go and tell Porfiry? And he's like, who's Porfiry? And he's like, the superintendent, the detective. And he's like, oh yeah, well, I not at first, because the porters didn't want to do it, but I couldn't get it out of my mind, because I thought that you'd done it, and I thought I was letting a murderer go. And so finally I went and told him, and I only got there. He's like, I went to him and I tried to get to him, and today was the third time that I've tried to tell him. And he was finally there. He finally saw me. And like minutes later, you came in, and he shut me in this little room, and he said, you stay here, I might call you. But he had me waiting in the next room. I could hear everything that you were saying. I could hear how he was questioning you. And so if that's true, that he could hear Raskolnikov being questioned and really being badgered, he also heard Nikolay come in and confess to everything. And that's why he feels bad, because he saw that somebody else really must have committed this crime, and that him going to the police had caused all this trouble for Raskolnikov, and that Raskolnikov got all like badgered and interrogated over a crime that he didn't commit. This is his view of it. And so he's coming to Raskolnikov and asking for forgiveness. And Raskolnikov is so relieved, and he's kind of just replaying everything that happened in that room with Porfiry. Like he's thinking, how much fact does Porfiry even have? Like, is everything just circumstantial? And then this was his, key witness. And he's like, he keeps saying it cuts both ways. It cuts both ways. I think what he's saying is, yeah, it looks kind of suspicious and weird that I went there, but maybe not. I did pawn stuff with her. I could have just been interested in seeing the flat as I was walking by. I was sick and delirious. Like, there could be ways of kind of explaining why he had been there, apart from that he murdered her and he's back at the scene of the crime. I mean, it's not anything conclusive. It's just an odd thing that he did, but it could be explained away. It's nothing that like puts him at the scene of the crime as the murderer. It's just something after the fact that he did that seemed odd, that somebody else thought was odd. And now that somebody that was there at the scene, who was seen at the scene, has confessed, even though Porfiry doesn't believe that it's him, Raskolnikov is kind of feeling like, hey, maybe it's more than a breather for a day. Like maybe he really has a chance of beating this thing. So once again, he feels like he's got a little bit of a new lease on life. And although he kind of doesn't feel like he's totally out of the woods, he feels for the first time in a while that there's hope. And so we will see what happens in part 5. We'll be moving on into part 5 and we'll see what happens next.